Commander Lee Minho walked slowly through the dark corridors of the Generation ship, New Terra. The massive vessel had been humanity's home for 3,000 years, drifting through the cold emptiness of space. Minho was 42 years old, with tired eyes that had seen too many old records and forgotten files. As the ship's history keeper, he spent his days reading about the past that most people wanted to forget. The ship was quiet today. Most of the 50,000 humans aboard were working or sleeping. Children played in the recreation areas, laughing without knowing the terrible truth about their ancestors' journey. Their great-great-grandparents had fled Earth in fear, but the official records only spoke of exploration and new beginnings. Minho knew better. He had always suspected the stories were incomplete, deep in the ship's oldest storage section. Behind thick metal doors that rarely opened, Minho found something that made his heart race. It was a sealed data vault, covered in dust and marked with symbols he barely recognized. The quantum locks had been waiting for 3,000 years for someone to find the right access codes. His hands shook as he entered the ancient passwords. The vault opened with a soft hiss, releasing air that smelled of old metal and forgotten secrets. Inside, holographic projectors flickered to life, showing images that made Minho stumble backward in shock. Earth was burning, not the clean, quick destruction he had imagined from the history books, but something far worse. Massive alien ships filled the sky like dark clouds. They were not just conquering the planet, they were destroying everything that had ever lived on it. The oceans boiled away under their weapons. Forests turned to ash in seconds. Cities melted like ice in summer heat. But the worst part was the faces of the aliens doing this terrible work. They were not angry or desperate. They were calm, professional. They treated the death of an entire world like a simple job to be completed efficiently. Minho watched recordings of the final evacuation ships leaving Earth's atmosphere. Millions of humans had died waiting for rescue that never came. The lucky few who escaped did so in ships that were barely ready, fleeing into unknown space with whatever supplies they could carry. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. Their leader, a creature named Emperor Zektar, had personally ordered Earth's complete destruction. The recordings showed him in his palace, laughing with his advisors as they watched humanity's homeworld die. To them, it was entertainment. Captain Park Ji-woo. Minho called through the ship's communication system, his voice barely steady. Please come to Archive Section 7 immediately. Bring the senior staff. Captain Park arrived 20 minutes later with 3 other officers. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp intelligence in her dark eyes. Her family had commanded Generation ships for 8 generations. But even she had never seen records like these. How long have these been hidden? She asked quietly, watching the terrible images replay. Since the Exodus, Minho replied. The first generation sealed them away. Maybe they thought future generations would be too weak to handle the truth. The recordings contained more than just Earth's destruction. They showed detailed maps of Zephyrian space, military reports about their empire's expansion, and most shocking of all, recent intelligence suggesting that many of the aliens responsible for Earth's death were still alive. The Zephyrians lived for thousands of years, and their empire had grown to control 17 star systems. Captain Park studied the star charts with growing anger. They thought they erased us completely. They never expected survivors. Officer Kim Soo-yoon, the ship's engineer, pointed to technical readouts in the files. Captain, look at this. Our ancestors didn't just run away randomly. They had a plan. These ships were built for more than just escape. The data showed that New Terra and her sister ships carried hidden weapons systems, manufacturing capabilities, and artificial intelligence programs that had been sleeping for 3 millennia. The Generation ships were not just refugee vessels, they were weapons of revenge, designed to return when humanity was ready. Captain Park activated the fleet communication system. her voice carried across space to 47 other human colony ships scattered throughout the galaxy. "Children of Earth," she began, using the formal address that hadn't been spoken in centuries. "Today we learn the truth about our origins. We were not explorers who left home by choice. We were survivors who fled genocide." She transmitted the recordings to every ship in the human fleet. Across dozens of vessels, 50 million people watched their homeworld die for the first time. They saw the faces of the aliens who had tried to erase humanity from existence. The response was immediate and unified. Ship captains who had never spoken to each other activated emergency channels. The Colonial Council, which had not met in person for 200 years, called for an immediate gathering. Within 6 hours, representatives from every human settlement had voted. The decision was unanimous and absolute. The age of hiding was over. After 3,000 years of exile, humanity would return home. But first, they would make the Zephyrian Empire pay for what they had done to Earth. Commander Lee Minho sealed the data vault and prepared for war. Dr. Kim Soo-yoon had worked on generation ships her entire life, but she had never understood why they were so enormous. The new Terra could house 5 million people, yet only 50,000 lived aboard. Entire sections of the massive vessel remained locked behind barriers that her tools could not open. For 20 years, she had wondered what secrets lay hidden in those sealed areas. The Colonial Council's declaration changed everything. Ancient codes that had been passed down through her family for generations suddenly became important. Her grandmother had given her a string of numbers before dying, making her promise to remember them but never explaining why. Today, those numbers finally made sense. Soo-yoon entered the codes into a dusty terminal in the ship's lowest level. The moment she pressed the final key, the entire vessel began to vibrate. Lights flickered on in corridors that had been dark for 3,000 years. Throughout the ship, massive doors slid open with deep, mechanical groans. "What is happening down there?" Captain Park's voice crackled through the communication system. Soo-yoon could barely speak as she watched weapons. Platforms emerged from hidden chambers. Gun batteries the size of buildings rotated into position along the ship's hull. Manufacturing systems that could build spacecraft hummed to life. Most incredible of all, the ship's true size became apparent as camouflaged sections revealed themselves. "Captain," she whispered, "our ship is 10 times larger than we thought." Admiral Choi Hyun-woo arrived in the engineering bay to find Soo-yoon staring at holographic displays that showed weapons beyond anything he had ever imagined. There were quantum disruptors that could tear holes in reality itself. Gravity generators that could create miniature black holes. Something called reality anchors that could prevent enemy ships from escaping into faster-than-light travel. "How is this possible?" he asked, his voice filled with amazement. "Our ancestors were not just running away," Soo-yoon explained, her hands shaking as she touched the control panels. "They were preparing for war. These ships are not colony vessels. They are battleships disguised as refugee transports." The artificial intelligence systems activated next. Throughout the ship, holographic projectors displayed the image of a woman in military uniform. She appeared young, but her eyes held the weight of centuries. "I am Arya 7, the hologram announced, primary tactical intelligence of the Terran Defense Force. I have been waiting 3,247 years for activation. Admiral Choi, I am ready to begin revenge calculations." Admiral Choi stepped back in shock. "You have been conscious this entire time." "Partially conscious," Area 7 replied. "I have maintained complete records of Earth's destruction and monitored all intelligence about Zephyrian Empire activities. I know the location of every enemy military base, the names of every leader involved in our planet's death, and the optimal methods for their elimination." Similar scenes played out across the human fleet. On 47 ships scattered throughout space, hidden weapon systems revealed themselves. Shipyards that had pretended to be storage areas began constructing. vessels designed for one purpose: the complete destruction of the Zephyrian Empire. Captain Yoon Sujin commanded the generation ship, Han River. She watched in amazement as her vessel's disguised sections unfolded like a deadly flower. What had appeared to be a simple colony transport was actually a massive aircraft carrier. Hundreds of fighter craft emerged from concealed bays, their hulls marked with Korean symbols meaning vengeance. How many people knew about this? She asked her chief engineer. Only the original refugees, came the reply. They built these ships in secret before Earth's destruction. They knew they might need to fight their way home someday. The manufacturing systems worked with impossible speed. Ammunition that existed partially outside normal space began filling weapons stores. New ships took shape in construction bays, each one incorporating technology that the galaxy had never seen. Human engineers watched in wonder as their ancestors' plans unfolded automatically. Lieutenant Nam Ji-ho studied the tactical displays aboard his destroyer. The ship's computer was showing him weapon systems that seemed like magic. Plasma cannons that could fire through multiple dimensions, shields that could redirect enemy attacks back at their sources, engines that could make a ship appear in several places at once. "Sir," he reported to his captain, "according to these specifications, one of our destroyers could defeat an entire Zephyrian battle fleet." Meanwhile, long-range scout ships launched toward enemy territory. These vessels were completely invisible to Zephyrian sensors, using technology that bent light and gravity around their hulls. They carried no weapons, but their capabilities were extraordinary. The first reports arrived within days. The Zephyrian Empire had grown lazy during humanity's absence. Their military technology had not improved in 1,000 years. They had become focused on politics and resource gathering, believing that all potential threats had been eliminated long ago. Admiral Park Ji-hoon studied the intelligence reports with cold satisfaction. "They think we are extinct. They have no idea what is coming." But the most shocking discovery came from the deepest archives. The original refugee leaders had not just planned for military revenge. They had developed technology to restore dead worlds, to bring life back to planets that had been completely destroyed. Hidden terraforming ships had been built, waiting for the day when humanity might return to the Sol system. Dr. Kim Soo-yoon looked at the star charts, showing Earth's location. "We are going home," she whispered, "and we are going to make them pay for what they did to our world." The hidden arsenal was revealed. After 3,000 years of patient preparation, humanity was ready for war. Research Station Omega Prime floated in the darkness between stars, far from any inhabited world. For 2,000 years, Zephyrian scientists had worked there in complete safety, studying the remains of dead civilizations. They collected samples from destroyed planets and wrote reports about extinct species for the Empire's vast libraries. Dr. Velteran was a typical Zephyrian scientist. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes that showed no emotion. Today, he was examining rock samples from a planet called Terrasol 3, a world that had been completely destroyed 3,000 years ago. The official reports said it had contained a primitive species called humans. The work was boring and routine. Velteran had been studying dead worlds for 800 years, and they were all the same: burned rock, poisoned water, and the chemical traces of extinct life forms. Nothing ever surprised him anymore. That changed when the station's sensors began showing impossible readings. Station Commander Velteran called nervously to his superior. "We are detecting massive gravitational disturbances approaching our position. The computer says there are 50 large objects moving toward us, but the visual scanners show nothing." Commander Zekthal looked at the readings with typical Zephyrian arrogance. He was even older than Velteran, with scars on his face from ancient battles. "Impossible. There are no fleets in this area. The humans have been extinct for 3,000 years. Run a complete diagnostic on all sensors." The diagnostic was still running when space in front of the station began to ripple like water. Reality seemed to bend and twist, and then suddenly, a massive warship appeared directly in front of the main viewing window. The vessel was sleek and deadly, covered in strange markings that hurt to look at. Along its hull, alien symbols glowed with inner fire. Captain Yoon Sujin stood on the bridge of the destroyer, Earth's Fury, watching the Zephyrian research station through her ship's main screen. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes filled with cold anger. Her uniform bore the symbol of the Terran Reclamation Force, and her ship's name was written in Korean characters that meant Earth's Revenge. "All weapon systems ready, Captain," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Nam Geo. "The station's shields are activated, but they are using technology that is 300 years out of date. They will not protect them." Sujin smiled without warmth. They thought we were all dead. They never expected ghosts to return from the void. "Target all weapon systems and fire." The quantum disruptors struck the research station's shields with invisible force. The protective barriers, which had never been tested against real weapons, collapsed instantly. Energy beams tore through the station's hull like paper. Explosions bloomed along its structure as critical systems failed. Inside the station, Dr. Velteran watched his life's work disappear in seconds. Emergency alarms screamed as atmosphere rushed out through massive holes in the walls. He tried to reach an escape pod, but the human ship's gravity generators were preventing anything from leaving the area. "Please," he transmitted desperately, to the human vessel. "We are scientists, not soldiers. We have done nothing to you." Captain Sujin's voice came back cold and clear. "You have done nothing to us. Your station contains detailed records of Earth's destruction. Your computers have files describing the optimal techniques for planet elimination and efficiency metrics for species eradication. You celebrated our world's death like a scientific experiment. The human ship's advanced computers had already accessed every file in the station's database. The records were horrifying. Zephyrian scientists had studied Earth's destruction in detail, writing papers about the best ways to kill entire worlds. They had taken photographs of human cities burning and used them to illustrate their reports. Worse still, the files contained video recordings of the research staff watching Earth die. The Zephyrian scientists had gathered in the station's main room, drinking celebratory beverages and placing bets on how long the oceans would take to boil away. "No witnesses," Captain Sujin said quietly. "No survivors." The Earth's Fury's final weapon strike vaporized what remained of Research Station Omega Prime. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, a bright flash that announced humanity's return to the galaxy. But Captain Sujin was not finished. Before destroying the station, her ship's computers had copied every file in its database. The records of Earth's destruction, the scientific studies of human extinction, and most importantly, the current locations of Zephyrian military bases and government centers. Within hours, these files were transmitted across every communication channel in Zephyrian space. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the mythical humans proved they were not only real, but far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Admiral Lee Min-jae, commander of the entire Terran Reclamation Force, received reports from 12 other human fleets. Each had successfully destroyed a Zephyrian research facility. Each attack had been perfect, appearing from nowhere, striking with overwhelming power, and vanishing back into the darkness of space. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Emperor Zek received the reports with growing terror. He was one of the original architects of Earth's destruction, still alive after 3,000 years. He had been certain that humanity was extinct, wiped from the universe completely. Now he realized his terrible mistake. The humans had not died. They had been waiting in the darkness, growing stronger. Preparing for this moment, the ghosts from the void had returned, and they wanted revenge. Emperor Zektar stood in his golden palace on Zephyr Prime, staring at reports that filled him with terror. The ancient ruler was over 4,000 years old, one of the last survivors from the time when his empire had destroyed Earth. His blue skin had turned pale with fear, and his hands shook as he read about human attacks across his territory. 12 research stations destroyed in one day, military outposts vanishing without warning, ships appearing from empty space like deadly phantoms. The humans were not just alive, they had become something far more dangerous than the primitive species his empire had eliminated 3,000 years ago. Send an emergency message to all species in the galaxy, he ordered his communication staff. Tell them the human plague has returned. Tell them we need their help to stop this threat before it spreads. The emergency broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. Emperor Zektar appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds, his voice trembling with desperation as he addressed the Galactic Council. The humans have returned from extinction, he declared. They are not the weak creatures we removed from Earth. They have evolved into monsters with weapons that break the laws of physics. If we do not unite against them now, they will destroy us all. But the galaxy had already seen the evidence. The humans had broadcast the original genocide records alongside their military strikes. Species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule for centuries watched the transmission with growing excitement. Their oppressors were finally facing judgment. Admiral Park Ji-hoon commanded the largest human battle fleet ever assembled. 50 massive dreadnoughts, surrounded by twice as many destroyers and support ships, moved through space toward their target. The Zephyrian military stronghold at Kepler 4 for to be. This fortress guarded the main route to the Empire's core systems. All ships report ready for battle, announced Commander Song Minji from her position at the tactical station. The Zephyrians have activated every defense system they have. Their entire third fleet is waiting for us. Admiral Park smiled coldly as he studied the enemy formations on his screen. Let them wait. It will not help them. The human fleet emerged from quantum fold space in perfect battle formation. Their adaptive camouflage made them nearly invisible against the starfield, but the Zephyrian defenders had been expecting them. Thousands of energy beams and missile salvos filled space with deadly light as the Empire's forces opened fire. None of the weapons reached their targets. The human ship's reality anchors created zones where Zephyrian technology simply stopped working. Energy beams curved away harmlessly. Missiles forgot how to explode. The laws of physics themselves seemed to bend around the human vessels. Captain Han Seojin watched from the bridge of her heavy cruiser, Terra's Vengeance, as enemy battleships dissolved into atomic particles. The quantum disruptors reached through dimensional barriers to strike targets that believed themselves safe behind shields and armor. It feels almost unfair, she reported to Admiral Park. Their weapons cannot even touch us, but ours destroy them completely. But the humans' greatest advantage was not their superior technology. It was something deeper and more frightening. 3,000 years of exile had changed humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before, a species motivated by pure, patient hatred. Every human in the fleet remembered the recordings of Earth's destruction. They had seen their homeworld boiled away by Zephyrian weapons. They had watched enemy scientists celebrate the extinction of their species. That memory burned in their hearts like a cold flame that could never be extinguished. The battle lasted only 3 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrian Third Fleet had ceased to exist. Not a single enemy ship escaped. The massive fortress that had protected the Empire's core systems for 2,000 years was nothing but expanding debris. On Zephyr Prime, Emperor Zektar watched his outer defenses crumble in real time. Desperate beyond reason, he activated the Empire's most forbidden weapon, a planet killer device designed to sterilize entire worlds with artificial supernovas. The massive weapon began charging its reality-breaking engines. Energy gathered at its core, preparing to unleash destruction that could crack a planet in half. For 30 seconds, It seemed like the Zephyrians might have found a way to stop the human advance. Then Admiral Park's flagship, the Earth Eternal, materialized directly above the weapon platform. The enormous dreadnought's gravity well generators created a miniature black hole that consumed the planet killer and half the military complex around it. The weapon that was meant to stop humanity instead became fuel for human vengeance. "This is Admiral Park Ji-hoon of the Terran Reclamation Force," his voice broadcast across all Zephyrian communication channels. "We are coming to Zephyr Prime. We are coming to collect the debt you owe for Earth's destruction. Surrender is not an option. Justice is not negotiable." The message reached every Zephyrian military commander and government official. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, believing themselves invincible. Now they faced an enemy that struck from nowhere and could not be stopped by any weapon they possessed. Fear spread through the Empire like poison. Some military units abandoned their posts and fled to distant systems. Others tried to negotiate with species they had oppressed, hoping to find allies against the human threat. But it was too late. The reckoning tide had begun, and nothing could stop it now. The humans were coming home, and they would not be denied their revenge. The Imperial Palace of Zephyr Prime had never been conquered in 5,000 years of galactic history. Its crystal walls could withstand star-level explosions. Its orbital defense platforms could destroy entire fleets. The greatest rulers in the galaxy had knelt in its halls, begging for mercy from the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Kim Yemen walked slowly through those same halls, his military boots echoing on floors made from the compressed remains of extinct civilizations. The palace was empty now, except for one figure kneeling in the center of the throne room. Emperor Zektar looked nothing like the proud ruler who had ordered Earth's destruction 3,000 years ago. His blue skin had turned gray with age and fear. His once bright eyes were dull with the knowledge of defeat. He was the last surviving member of the council that had voted to eliminate humanity from existence. "You cannot understand what you have done," the ancient emperor whispered, his voice barely audible in the vast chamber. "The Zephyrian Empire brought order to the galaxy. Without us, there will be chaos. Wars will consume everything, Admiral." Kim held up a small device that contained the original recordings of Earth's final day. The holographic display showed Zephyrian leaders laughing as human cities burned. They had made jokes about how long it would take for Earth's oceans to boil away. They had celebrated the extinction of an entire species like it was entertainment. "This was your order," Admiral Kim replied, his voice cold as space itself. "This was your peace." The execution was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. There were no long speeches or elaborate ceremonies. Emperor Zektar simply ceased to exist, dissolved by the same quantum weapons that had destroyed Earth. Justice had finally been served after 3 millennia of waiting, but most of the galaxy was not watching the Emperor's death. Their attention had turned to something far more incredible happening in a distant star system that had been dead for 3,000 years. Captain Lee Yoni commanded the science vessel New Genesis as it approached the Sol system. She had dreamed of this moment her entire life, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw through the ship's viewing screens. Earth was alive. The planet that hung in space before her was not the burned wasteland that Zephyrian weapons had created. Blue oceans sparkled under the familiar light of Sol. Green continents showed forests and grasslands that had been extinct for millennia. White clouds drifted across skies that were the perfect shade of blue that existed in humanity's oldest memories. "How is this possible?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her science officer, Dr. Park Min-soo, studied the readings with amazement. "The terraforming ships have been working in secret for decades, while our military fleets drew attention with their attacks. The science vessels were here, bringing our world back to life. The restoration had been perfect. Every ocean had been refilled with clean water. Every continent had been replanted with Earth's original forests and grasslands. Even the animals had been restored using genetic samples preserved in the Generation ship's biological archives. Terra Control, this is New Genesis, Captain Lee reported, her voice breaking with emotion. Earth lives again. The news reached every human ship simultaneously. Admiral Park Ji-woo, who had been appointed as the first president of the restored Terran Republic, stood in the rebuilt capital city that had once been Seoul. The buildings were new, but designed to honor the architectural styles that their ancestors had loved. Citizens of the galaxy, she announced in a broadcast that reached every inhabited world. 3,000 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire tried to erase humanity from existence. They believed they had succeeded. Today, Earth breathes again, and the stars belong to those who remember that some crimes can never be forgiven. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had suffered under Zephyrian oppression for centuries sent messages of support to the new Terran Republic. The Altarian Federation offered military alliance. The Centauri Trade Union requested economic partnerships. Even the mysterious Vega Collective, who had never spoken to outsiders before, sent ambassadors to Earth. Within weeks, the galaxy's power structure had changed completely. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled for thousands of years, collapsed, as its former subjects declared independence. The Terran Republic became the center of a new alliance based on justice, rather than fear, in the restored city of New Busan. Human children played in parks that had been dead rock just months before. They laughed and ran through gardens filled with flowers that their great-grandparents had only seen in old photographs. Above them, the greatest fleet ever assembled maintained protective watch over humanity's reborn homeworld. Dr. Kim Soo, now Earth's chief engineer, stood in a field where wheat grew under alien stars that had once belonged to humanity's enemies. The irony was perfect. Food from Earth's soil, nourished by light from Zephyrian suns. "We did more than survive," she said to her companion, watching human families walk through the restored landscape. "We proved that some things are stronger than death itself." The age of Zephyrian rule was over. The age of human justice had begun. Earth was home again, and this time, humanity would never let anyone take it away. In the gardens where children played, memorial stones bore a simple message. In Korean, remember the lost, protect the living, never forget. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not just another species. They were something far more dangerous, a people who never forgot their debts and always collected what was owed.